Bada bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum bum, bada bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum bum, bada bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum, bada 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 bum, bada bum bum.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Marvel What Now podcast. This is episode 3, where we are breaking down episode 4 of WandaVision.
Never not going to be confusing.
Always one behind. I think we need to do some kind of filler episode just so we can catch up.
We're learning.
I don't know about you, but I just want to dive right in and start talking about.
Let's go off to the races. Here we go.
No banter.
Yeah, nobody wants to hear that crap. Let's talk about the good.
Oh my god, I don't even know where to start.
I can
that
start.
Opening.
I have the thing to start with.
Please, by all means.
Tiana Paris. I mean, regardless of what we talk about, in terms of the plot of the show, what an amazing casting decision. I just think that this character is going to be someone that we are going to see in the Marvel Universe for a long, long time. And I think there are a lot more surprises in store for her. And I just absolutely think she is magnetic, amazing, and just absolutely incredible.
I absolutely agree. When I wasn't quite sure what this episode was going to be, and when it starts on that, seeing the snap, her coming back, it was just an immediate, what the hell is this? What's going on? Is this the snap? Is this Wanda breaking reality? What the hell is happening? That opening scene was just kind of like heartbreaking, but I'm really glad that we're still getting glimpses of the snap and what's come to that, where how it's motivating all these characters. And we haven't really gotten to see too much of Monica Rambeau. We've seen her as Geraldine in the sort of WandaVision sitcom, but we don't know that much about her. So it was really nice tie-in to see her tie into like Captain Marvel, but now like we're getting backstory of who she is and Sword. And I agree, her performance is incredible.
She's just, I mean, the change, they very heavy-handedly said Captain Rambeau many times, and I think that's going to come into play in the future. But it also, I also think it's a testament to Tiana Paris's performance. I mean, when she's herself, there's just a strength, an intelligence. There's a commanding presence. She really is.
Mm-hmm.
She really is her mother's daughter. You know what I mean? And jumping back to the first part you had mentioned about the snap. When we were watching this the second time, it was Ashton, who is my boyfriend. It's the first time he was watching it. He was really kind of disoriented at first, which I thought was exactly what they wanted to happen. He didn't realize until it cut away when everybody was coming back. He's like, "Oh God, this is everybody coming back from the snap." So I thought that was a cool.
Mm-hmm.
It was very panic inducing, just as what she's experiencing. I think you as the viewer was kind of like, "Oh God!" I mean, they just literally were like, "Okay, we're going, we're starting. Here it is, we're back in the snap." And then there was just a lot of like exposition. We talked about in the past how they don't lead you by the hand in everything, and they give you, I think, exposition in character moments, so it's not all like, here, let me just explain what's happening now. Like, you kind of have to make you have to connect the dots and like the clothespins of the major points, but I think they give you enough information to do that. So immediately in like 5 minutes we see where we are in terms of like what the snap, when it happens. We obviously see that Monica got snapped away. First off, she was a person who was a victim of the snap. And then we see that, Maria is unfortunately now not only passed, but she also was the person who created Sword. So now we got Peggy Carter creating Shield, Maria Rambeau creating Sword. The future is female. Amazing.
And yet they're still run by Nick Fury
and like, you're right,
douche
McDoo white guy.
Yeah. Which I mean, we can talk about the psychological implications that the snap would have on a society, but it's also really interesting to see these moments of oh, okay, she got screwed out of a job
Mm-hmm.
promotion, you know, like her rightful position, even something as minor as
Mm-hmm.
that,
Mm-hmm.
like sort of affecting her
And then
character.
it shows in like a contextual way, like the world, like how people react to people returning and how they integrate them back into society. You know what I mean? And Maria already, you know, having a contingency plan for that is they really have given that character all the roses as she deserves. You know what I mean? So
I think one of the biggest things I loved about the opening scene was you said it was disorienting, and I absolutely agree. This is the first time that we've really started to see sort of like what's happening outside of the sitcom reality. And it just throws you right in. And so you don't really know what's happening. You don't know when it's happening. And it's just like, okay, here's this crazy intro. And then, oh, right, we're still in
you know,
WandaVision.
nobody wants to
Let's
help. I
show
mean,
you
in
how
the
it
hospital,
connects.
nobody wants to, like, everybody has their own agenda immediately. I mean, think about it. Like, think about if either you were snapped back or you were a person who realized what was happening. I mean, my gosh, wouldn't the first thing you would be to be like, try to find the person who you might have lost or a family member? You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, they're back. Where are they? You know what I mean? So, like, she goes to ask the nurse, and he's like, F you, bitch, bye. Like, you know, he was totally not into it. And like everybody had that same, you know, everybody had that same kind of attitude. So I think it was cool to see, you know, Spider-Man Far From Home did deal with the consequences of the snap, but I don't think it really was like, I mean, frankly, dramatic. I mean, it wasn't really like super I don't know, like maybe emotionally resonant. They talked about it and it was kind of a part of the plot, but it wasn't like, I think it was even in this like first opening scene, it was a much more like weighty, there just was a lot more gravity to it to me. And it just really actually felt like there was true consequence from like that happening, you know?
They handled it much, I feel like maybe more lighthearted in Far From Home. You even have the scene where the band blips back and they're on the basketball court and a basketball player like runs into it, or like more slapstick comedy. But you're also watching it like through the lens of a student. Like these are 15-year-old kids. Like, of course they're going to be like, oh, we're snapped out of existence and then we still have to take our exams. and, and then you see the adults and it's like, where's my mom? My mom was just here. Like just that more adult, like, oh, shit's getting real, you know, just heavier feeling. And I hope they sort of, the snap, you know, doesn't like go away. I still want them to move in a direction. It's like, okay, we're moving past it, but still acknowledging it. And I think they're handling it really well.
I think so too. That you know, it can't not be something. Do you know what I mean? It can't not be something. It's something that every single person went through. And if we're looking at the timing of the show, let's connect this back to WandaVision now. We're like talking about we're just love talking about the snap. But I do think this is important though, because let's talk about the timeline about when all this happens. So if Monica comes back and we find out that it's like 3 years, right? It's 3 years after, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So but here that's where I'm confused back is if they're snap back, isn't that when essentially like Endgame is happening? Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, when she gets snapped back, that would
isn't
be
that
right
when
after
Endgame is happening,
Hulk.
like in the final battle? Does that make sense? Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that would, okay. I mean, I thought it was like crazy when I was thinking that. I was like, it has to be that moment because that's when everybody was snapped back.
When we pick up with Monica Rambeau and she's at SWORD headquarters, she's sort of being like debriefed and like given her mission. Wanda's sitcom reality is just now being discovered by Jimmy Woo. And so I think sometime in that period between, okay, she snapped back, she's getting back into the world, figuring out SWORD, like, what is she going to do? She hasn't been on a mission. This is her first mission. And Wanda's already created this reality. So there has to be, with it happening so recently after Endgame, it has to be Wanda dealing with some kind of trauma, you know, big snap back into an existence.
I almost feel like it's almost like if like think of this. Okay, so Wanda gets snapped back right as the like final battle happens. That's when everybody comes back. Okay. So in the battle, the people don't even realize like how long they've been gone. When Monica comes back, she thinks she was just asleep 20 minutes ago. So they're kind of giving you the answer of what people who were snapped away experienced. You know what I mean? So Wanda comes back and she destroys Thanos' face in Endgame. Oh, you will. That was the first time where you're like, oh my god. And that was we watched this together, and I mean, people cheered. I mean, people went crazy at that moment when she, was like, she put all the, like, she like levitated all the blocks behind her. It was really, to be honest, the first Scarlet Witch moment. I mean, in my opinion, in the MCU. I mean, it wasn't like it was definitely a heroic moment, but it was a scary moment. I mean, it was like, oh gosh, she could rip him apart if he hadn't called in the airstrike. She would have totally taken him down there. So it's good to see that they're finally having consequences for that happening in the world. I think though, if the battle happens, and I mean, is this right after the battle? Is she maybe like immediately does she lose it when the battle's over, and then it's like she starts to realize what's happened? I think it's very close. This show happens very close to after Endgame.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what that timeline would be, because she comes back, immediately fights the battle. I'm sure she's still full of rage and heartbreak over seeing Vision die. But where do you go after that? Okay, you saved the universe, but your partner's still dead, your brother's still dead, you're still this weapon who you don't even understand your
weapon,
own powers.
as we've learned what SWORD is called in the MCU finally. The sentient weapon. What was the acronym? What was the full acronym? I had it.
Sentient weapon observation response
division. And I think they also really, you see that SWORD has, I do think it has a chain of command, but it also has pockets where it is its own thing. I mean, Monica's, it looks like he's the boss. It's not Fury. At least he's maybe the boss on the planetary side. If maybe Fury's the lead in the space station, which is we've seen. A lot of like logistical questions there too, but we now see that they are an actual organization, and they monitored not only the extraterrestrial situations, if you will, but it seems now that superpowered people are labeled sentient weapons, and they're all being monitored in some point as well. Is this maybe a new evolution of the Sokovia Accords? Maybe maybe it's like what the world is now. I mean, if a space alien snaps away the entire planet, you would think that the world response would have to be something. We have to start taking it seriously.
I could also see this be where they introduce the term Omega level. Like as these, it started out with Iron Man and Captain America, but now with like Scarlet Witch and Captain Marvel and Doctor Strange, it's like, okay, these people can really do some damage. I noticed there already started to be like a little bit of a rift between Monica and the director of SWORD. He seemed to be focused. There was a conversation where they have in the very beginning, and he's focusing on the sentient weapon side of SWORD, and she's like, well, we're also observation and
she has the very point in line where she's
not everything.
She has the very point in line when they're walking, and she says, well, we also have allies in space, obviously referring to Captain Marvel.
Exactly. So I mean, he seems to be much more of the like Nick Fury kind of, oh, we need a strong military presence, we need strong defense, and she's like, no, we need to like learn and observe, and why not work together rather than just treating everything as a threat and a weapon.
I'm interested to see what we find. I mean, because there's a couple of things that we're learning here now. So obviously we have to talk about Jimmy Woo and Darcy. Obviously just amazing casting. It's good to see both of them back in roles that make sense. Do you know what I mean? It seems like a natural progression for both of them. You and I have talked before, like, I love Kat Dennings, but I've never liked how they've used her in the MCU, even though I like what I think they're trying to use her as in the MCU. Does that make sense? I know that's kind of weird. I know that's like a weird criticism, but I think finally she's in the right place now. Finally, she's in the right place, and you know, just her, just all the like subtle comment when she's like, Wanda washes the dishes one time per episode, barf. You know, and she's actually the person who discovers, she is the person who discovers the TV and that it's actually a show being broadcast. So you immediately right there, you know, shows the brilliance, and she has the quirk and the funniness, but it's not like overbearing, out of place like I think that it is in the Thor movies. And you know, she's engaging still. Do you know what I mean?
I totally agree about the use of Darcy and Jimmy Woo. Thor: Dark World. I mean, you and I have talked about it in person. Not one of the,
I'm sorry,
better Marvel movies.
Thor: Dark World. I had to vomit.
But I totally agree the way that she was used in this, and not even just like likable. They just give her more things, because in Thor she was all about, oh, she's an intern who hired an intern, and you know, like, why is she even there? Is she interested? And now in this show, she's like, oh, it's Doctor now, and immediately like working things and much more confident. But she can, you're right, she can still have that slight, you know, like youthful snarkiness to her, and it totally fits. And yeah, they're portraying her as a brilliant astrophysicist, so I'm all for that.
There was a couple of different moments in both of the female characters in the show where they like just immediately and subtly just showed up like kind of the douchiness of the males. Like, I don't know why the guy, when Monica, her key card didn't work, like, he was overtly a douche. He was like, yeah, well, it doesn't work because you don't work here. And she's like, okay, chill, bro. Yeah. And then like the director of the building walks up and she's like, you were saying?
Yeah, and did he ever have a moment of like, oh shit, what did I do?
No, they didn't show that, but they definitely gave a lot of moments where, I mean, immediately Kat Dennings comes in, and they, again, of course, because it's just, you know, the shit patriarchal world that we live in. It's like the guy who's already there thinks she can't do it, and she's like, oh yeah, let me just solve this in like 5 seconds. And then the main captain guy, he comes over, and she like gives him all the answers, and he's like, all right, get to work, people. You know what I mean? Like, he obviously can't acknowledge that whole like militaristic thing, but she nails it right from the beginning as soon as she comes in. I mean, she's the reason that they make the connection when Jimmy does the when we see back in episode 2 with the radio, when he breaks through, and you know, Dottie with the cup when it shatters in her hand. It's cool to see those moments on the outside, what was happening on the outside whilst the show was being shot and how it was affecting it.
What if that screen with the security guard was just a setup for maybe later in the show, Monica has gotten her powers from Wanda or however she gets it, and she walks back into the building, swipes her card, it's not working, gets attitude from the guy working the front desk, and then she just like photon blasts
like a light
scanner.
Exactly.
I mean, that kind of goes back to Captain Marvel.
Yeah,
Nick Fury has to like use. He's like, you sat there and watched me use tape for 5 minutes. You could do that.
You know, and then when she like, you know, blows Jude Law away at the end, and she's like, look, bitch, I don't owe you anything. Get out of here. I don't have to kick your butt. I'll just blow your face away. Get out of my face. It's so good. So fulfilling. Yes.
And the moments with Jimmy Woo, I mean, he was an absolutely lovable character in Ant-Man and the Wasp, but wasn't given a lot of screen time, but, you know, definitely made a presence. And then I didn't even notice this until I started to see memes and stuff of it floating around online, but that quick sleight of hand where he does the magic trick and he pulls out his business card.
I completely forgotten that. And when I saw that as well, I saw that on the internet too, and I went, oh my God. And it's like those little small things that's where I go, like, I guess if a person just doesn't even, I mean, I am a huge fan, and like, obviously I see that connection now, but I really didn't make that connection immediately. I was like, oh my God, I just took it as this like dorky quirkiness. And then when you make the connection back to Ant-Man and the Wasp, it's like, it does make it so much more rich. You know what I mean? It does make it like, it's so simple and silly, but it is wonderful. Do you know what I mean?
It's those minor moments that really give you like paints a picture of them as a real person, you know, doing little things like learning magic in their own time. But
if you pay attention to the small moments, and the small moments are detailed, the big moments are going to be detailed. I'm
Exactly.
always a proponent of that, and I think this is another example of it. I had mentioned to Ashlyn that I hope and I feel like, because I really do think that we're seeing them how they're going to introduce new people now. I mean, this really was like, to me, the Tiana Pierce like debut episode. This was like, oh, this person's going to be major in the next, and this is her like moment. She's been a part of it, but like you don't really know what's happening. And then when they show her who she is, and like the daughter, and they connect it back to Captain Marvel, of course, it's like, it's exciting. It's super, super exciting about, oh my gosh, who is this going to be? Like, what is she going to do moving forward? And I felt like that, I hope maybe he won't be the exact same, but like they've made Jimmy such a kind of Coulson. He's kind of like a new Coulson. He could be, he has that same kind of like charm and like goofiness and lovability, but also he is an agent too. So I really hope they continue to use him and Kat Dennings both moving forward in roles like this, as the Sword organization will obviously pepper throughout the rest of the stories.
I would love an Agents of Sword spinoff.
Please,
Sorry.
God. Marvel, I know nobody is listening to this. In my heart of hearts, Kevin Feige gets up and listens to this every day. I'm begging you, please bring back Chloe Bennett. Please bring back Chloe Bennett as Quake. She is, I mean, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We could do a whole episode about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because I just love it. And it was the little show that could, the little Marvel show that could. And by the end, she was just, I mean, amongst many of the other cast members, but I felt like she was, in terms of the storyline, somebody that could connect over, and they could kind of, give her a visual upgrade with the powers and stuff. She would totally knock it out of the park. So that's my pitch for Chloe Bennett. So bring back.
Wasn't the Hydra soap commercial a reference to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, obviously the
some reference to Coulson.
Yes.
Something Coulson
Yes.
said.
Yes. And I think the soap is also in the show as well, which the showrunner actually confirmed that there is a secret in the commercials, that there is something there. The showrunner also confirmed many other things, or did not deny many other things as well too, but we can talk about that later. I want to ask you a question, Curtis, because we need to talk about the very beginning of the episode, what we learned from the outside, which, if you've been paying attention, I totally nailed in my what now prediction for this week. It will be focusing back, if you're keeping track, folks, the two people who listen to this. So could you talk a little bit about the beginning of the episode? Really weird vibes from a lot of things, and can you talk about what we learned from like that first conversation with Jimmy and Monica with the police guards and everything?
I had to watch that a couple of times because I wasn't fully following the idea, like the town didn't exist and he was tracking down a missing persons. I was about to ask you this. Do you why New Jersey? Do you think there's any significance to that? I mean, it's kind of somewhat close to New York, where the battle in Endgame occurred. So maybe Wanda was just trying to escape the city, and maybe
it was just the first small town. What happened to her after Endgame? You know what I mean? Like, obviously, she's at Tony's funeral. Okay, so that would probably not too long after that. If it's close to, maybe if you put it in New Jersey, and it's maybe within where the Avengers compound is, you know what I mean? Maybe she just, maybe it's like when she leaves, it's a little town she goes to, and then that. Yeah, I'm just trying to like connect the dots here. I don't know, but I don't know about that. But to me, it was just quite curious that the guards. So I think this also showed us the first time that it's not just the people on the inside of the orb that are affected. It is the people on the outside, because the guards themselves they're literally standing in front of the sign and they don't think that it's a town. You know what I mean? So like that, Monica, I believe, is the person who mentions it. She says like, so there's like this amnesia that happens to the people that are outside of the bubble, so it's also affected away from her, kind of radius that she's emanating this reality, this pocket reality.
Yeah, she referred to it as having an awareness of Westview, which I thought was interesting. We also find out, as Jimmy Woo and Darcy are basically like us. They've got the dry erase board writing down all their theories and tracking everything.
I
Just
saw
so,
memes of like,
what
you
are
know,
the
It's Always
hexagons?
Sunny, the Charlie meme, when he's like, you know, he's like looking crazy, and it's always like the connected dots. Like I saw people, so many memes of like that, and it's like him in front of that board.
So good. How does time work? What's with the hexagons?
Is Vision alive? Which we'll get to that. Which we'll get to that in a second.
But as they're doing their like FBI investigation, we do find out that the characters in the show are real people. You know, they all have New Jersey identities that they hang out, except for Agnes. Interesting enough,
Westview is a town. It is an actual place.
So that will definitely come into play. New Jersey does have some significance. I believe that was where the army base was that Cap trained, and then they go back to in Winter Soldier where they found Arnim Zola like in the underground bunker. That might have something to do with it, not quite sure. What's so great about this show is they leave all these little like Easter eggs and like breadcrumbs for you to follow or be like, oh my god, that's gonna blow my mind, and then it could potentially just go nowhere.
Exactly. I think that's like that. They purposely do that too.
As we're talking, we have so many theories. It's Mephisto, and he's manipulating everyone. And even Monica says at the end, you know, it's Wanda.
It's Wanda.
Like Mephisto could not be anywhere near this show. The whole fireplace going off, you know.
Why have we been doing this podcast? We're terrible. We need to quit. 3 episodes.
None of it matters.
3 episodes covering episode 4, not confusing, and now we're stopping because we just started. One of the things you had mentioned is about they mentioned these kind of smaller details that end up could be something that cannot be something. One of the things I want to mention is that Darcy, she mentions that she detects unnaturally high levels of, and I quote, cosmic microwave background radiation. That's CMBR acronym that she throws out. They show you that is relic radiation dating back to the Big Bang. That makes sense because if we also learn earlier in the MCU that the Infinity Stones were created from the Big Bang, probably something that is maybe important. We also know from that the descriptions in the MCU about that. God, my brain is like going crazy now because Natalie Portman's going to be coming back. She was affected by the Reality Stone.
Took the
Jane Foster Thor situation. That the Reality Stone could give her cancer. The stones with the radiation is why Tony died. It was because the radiation was too hot and it killed him.
Maria Rambeau passed away from cancer.
There you go.
And we know that she found his sword. She was, near the Tesseract. She's been exposed. I think the idea of cancer popping up everywhere
connected back to the cosmic radiation of the Infinity Stones. And I also believe too that Jimmy mentions that he's like, well, it just isn't, it's not near it, like the radiation. He's like, well, it's there, but it's just not emanating enough to affect us. So I also think that's going to be important. I mean, what if the bubble gets bigger? What if she makes the bubble bigger? Do you know what I mean? Then it's going to get pushed out and out and out. You know what I mean? Then it is all going to start effect. So I thought that is one of the things that I thought they mentioned that could be something that it also could connect back to, we talked about in our opinion that, Wanda is connected to the Infinity Stones and that her power comes from basically, that the Infinity Stone power, it is like cosmic radiation. And that's like the chaos inside of her is that, that kind of power of where it came from. So
I mean, you're also dealing with an entire universe that just dealt with coming to terms with the fact that half of everyone got snapped out of existence, and now you have this bubble reality that sucks people in. It transforms reality. They're not just gonna ignore that. They're gonna think, oh, is this gonna be like another blip? What could this lead to? They just don't know, and I'm sure they want to contain it as much as possible. We were just talking a couple minutes ago about Wanda in Endgame and sort of getting that first, okay, that's the Wanda's true Scarlet Witch nature, and there definitely does seem to be a correlation between her, being affected emotionally, if she's feeling rage or heartache, and how that amplifies her
Oh,
powers.
absolutely.
We saw it in Age of Ultron. After Pietro dies, she screams and blows up all the robots.
And she's not even there. She's not even there. She just feels it happen, and she just disintegrates the robots.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely something, maybe after Endgame, she's just so traumatized or broken in some way that this reality is manifesting itself, and the word awareness keeps coming up. Maybe she's not, I think she has those moments of awareness, but I don't know if she's 100% aware all the time in this reality. I think she's just trapped herself in it.
That's
almost.
what. Yes, oh, that's what I was gonna say. Oh my God, does he know what I'm thinking? It's in my same brain. We see a lot of how. We talked about when we see Monica come out of the portal, we also see the scientists go in as the beekeeper, and it so when things go into that, we see the drones go in, which we can probably connect back to all the sounds and like the vision with the neighborhood watch, like all these people trying to get in, like that's what that is.
Well, the drone even became the
exactly right. Well, I mean, when they said all the different ones, like that's what all that commotion stuff is. Obviously, we see the one that becomes the helicopter she sees in her bush. We see all of that kind of stuff. So, we're finally, it's making a little more sense now. Making a little more sense. I'm not going to say it's going to make a ton of sense. I do agree with you though. But think about now we're like wrapping it all up. Oh my God, my brain is like making all these connections now. If Wanda has just come back from Endgame, right, or the Infinity War, so she's just killed Vision. She's just killed Vision. Thanos has just reversed time, killed him again in front of her, and then she's disappeared. So when she snaps back right before Endgame, that's what's just happened to her. Do you know what I mean? So even if they win in Endgame, obviously they do, and it's over. I mean, think about that. Think about living with that.
Where do you
do? What do you do? Even though they beat Thanos and they did it, Vision's gone. She killed him. You know what I mean? Like he was killed twice in front of her, which I think we see. And I totally think that you're right. And that when the house starts to break down is when the things come out is when she immediately is like, nope, this can't be a part of my reality. Nope, I don't want this anymore. Get out of here. You don't make it. She literally calls Geraldine, she says, you're trespassing here, as she's like turning that's the words that she uses. And when she blows her out of the house, I think one of the most crucial things that we see, and probably one of the most it's going to crush us as it's going forward, is and this also goes back to the comics as well, when she blows Monica out of the house and there's the big hole in the house, okay, nothing's happening. If you go back to the episode, and I noticed this the second time because I paid attention to make sure this is what happens. She puts the house back together, and then the children cry. Not after the big explosion of blowing somebody out of your house. Once she puts it back together, what's the first, when Vision comes in, what do we see him as? That terrifying, oh my God, it was literally like, it was almost like you remember in Psycho? Have you ever seen Psycho? Have you ever seen Psycho, the movie, like the original?
Long
at
time
the
ago,
end, when he goes up to and he turns the mother around, and it's like her, like, it's like a skeletal face. You know what I mean? It's like she's dead, but he's got this wig on her, and that's the big reveal of that moment. To me, it felt very that as way too, but it also showed like once Geraldine broke the reality quote of the show, Wanda had to say, you don't belong here, and she pushed her away. So she realizes that Vision is, that's what she's thinking of, is Vision dead. He comes into the house, and he's the last thing to see, the real version of him. But then it cuts to her, and she looks away, she looks down, and then it cuts back, and when she looks back up, he's back to normal. So like it happens so quickly, and those are such small things, but to me that is like 100% telling, is that when she has the House of M, maybe, if you will, when she has the house put together, they're real. But when the things start to invade that, it starts to break down that reality, and she starts to lose control, and they start to become undone. It starts to go back to how it is. So I think that's going to be probably the big fight of the season is she's going to be fighting hard to keep that, which is going to kill me.
I do not see any of this ending well. I have no idea what's going to happen. I love the multiple levels of reality, because in that moment where she turns around and she sees dead Vision, I took that as, okay, she's sort of aware in this moment, and that's what she sees in her head. That's not her warping reality. Maybe that's not even like Vision's dead body and she projects this live version. Maybe that's just her like memories and trauma.
It's both of those things. I think it's both. So when he's the dead Vision, it's her seeing him, because that's the last thing she sees him as in her trauma, and that's what she's reliving it as. But then when she looks away and comes back and he's alive, he is real in that moment, and it is in their moment in the house, he is like actually real. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I that's exactly how I sort of took that scene. And Vision's definitely becoming more aware himself of the awkwardness and how things aren't adding up and nothing's making sense. And when he comes back into the house and kind of approaches Wanda, and he doesn't know where Geraldine is, he's obviously somewhat panicked, but doesn't want to let on. And Wanda says, with like a smile, she says, "I have everything under control." And so it's definitely Vision being like, okay, maybe you don't. And the big picture, what I think is happening is she's created this sitcom reality, and it's sort of not this like literal living organism, but sort of like a metaphor. She's created this perfect thing. I don't know what you'd call it. And then as Sword, everyone starts like breaking in and observing. They're kind of like infections or something, like attacking the host. And Wanda's just like, no, I'm gonna burn out these infections, like this has to stay pure and sterilized and
but then
clean.
her mind also makes other things make sense that she's not aware of. Does that make sense? So there are moments where, and I think in the that Vision moment, the back and forth to me is like so crucial, and so much to me emotionally happens so much, and like just like that last 30 40 seconds of the last 2 minutes or so, because when Vision has like his dead with the Mind Stone ripped out face, he's very like attentive and worrying, and like he almost like he just like is doting in the show. But then when she switches it back and it's actually him, that's when he starts to question it. That's when he starts to, and if you go back and rewatch it, and I paid attention because I thought I saw the first episode, the second episode, watch Vision's face when like the show is ending, and it's like when they sit down together at the couch with the babies, watch his face, because he's like, something isn't right here. And I think that's even more crushing in the fact that she's creating him, and it is him. And if it was him, he would be protecting him and like, this isn't right, Wanda, something's happening to us. So it's like, it's almost like, what if like Wanda and Vision are going to be the people who battle each other? Like, it's because he's trying to get her out of this, but she's trying to keep it together because she doesn't want to lose him. Oh my God.
I think that's the direction they're moving towards. I don't think it'll be like we keep saying Willow from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't know if it'll be a possessed thing, but as I'm watching the show and I'm trying to think of how Wanda would be dealing with her trauma, I don't know if you've ever dealt with anyone in your personal life sort of battling addiction or something that they use as a coping mechanism that in some kind of unhealthy way. But it's very hard to talk with those people and even just get them to acknowledge that, okay, maybe what you're doing to cope with something isn't what's best for you. And it's
and if you try to forcibly take it from them, that may not end up in a positive way. Do you know what I mean? That may not end up it's a good I think it's a good reference. It's a good analogy.
I don't think it'll be quite that dark, but that sense of just trying to like get her to like snap out of it, come to that realization that, hey, I know, I understand why you're doing this, but you can't do it. Like, it's harmful. Maybe she's sucked some of these other real world people into her delusional reality, these people of Westview and all the actors that she's dragged into the sitcom. Vision's gonna come to that moment where he's going to be the one that has to tell her. She's going to refuse. Her power will
Mhm.
grow even stronger.
Out of control.
And if maybe it's Vision, Photon, and the twins, maybe even Agatha Harkness, like battling against Wanda, or God, I don't know what that would be, but it's definitely all these theories about Mephisto. I think he could still play a role, but I'm starting to get the feeling more that it's 100%
I agree
Wanda.
with you too. Maybe we'll see like a kind of end credit scene that's like a connection, like a through line portion. But I don't think we're going to have this sort of big reveal. I just don't. And I think that's actually more resonant, that it is like, I guess we are our own worst enemy in a kind of corny way. Do you know what I mean? That kind of situation. But I do.
Mm-hmm.
You had said something before though that I think, and I agree that the kind of battle for the soul situation is going to be the ultimate kind of like tug and pull. But it's like, what do you do when you do to the person who you say to it, like, to, if, Xander says to Dark Willow, like, I love you, our friendship is everything, you please don't do this, you can't do this. But she's like, but actually I can. Wait a minute though, I can make all this happen. Yes, I can. You know what I mean? You just have such another
Who's
exactly,
gonna stop me?
another crazy variable there. And then we can touch base. We did see they did show a kind of like just a brief little teaser, some stuff that we've seen before, but some new scenes for the next kind of back half of the season, now that the kind of mystery's been broken open a little bit. Could you talk about a couple of things that we saw on that? Because we definitely saw at the very end, it was a climatic battle in the 80s. It looked like the 80s scene where like Vision and Wanda were like flying up against each other. You know what I mean? At least that may be a misdirect, but that's what it looked like. And you talk about some of the stuff that we saw in that.
So I only watched it once, and unfortunately I'm not like super familiar with it, but I think as the next several episodes there will start to be more quote unquote battles. Like in the sitcom reality, they're both superheroes with powers, but they're not doing anything superhero. They're not saving anything. They're not using their powers out in public. And in those upcoming clips, we definitely see them flying in broad daylight,
doing superhero-y things. Exactly. We see the 80s version. We definitely see that. We see the 90s version, which looked very Modern Family. It had that cutaway when she's sitting there and she's like, "Am I right?" That had a very Modern Family feel to it. So like that seems to be like maybe the 90s-ish episode that we're gonna see.
I think that was I think the 90s one will be the Roseanne. Do you remember? There's been some promo shots. She sort of has like bigger hair and I think some suspenders, and it felt a little more like Roseanne, like Blue Collar Family, and then Modern Family would be right 2000s, 2010s.
The Halloween episode.
There was the scene.
When is it going to happen?
That's the one I'm most excited for. And with this, oh God, even the name of the episodes are so genius. What was this one? It's we
pardon the interruption. I think it was what it was. Like what's it called?
Yeah, like even just taking a break. Reference, they still reference the first 3 episodes in this show, but
the titles are very
like,
television.
Okay, we're gonna catch up with Sword,
jargon related.
Oh, so much jargon, but I love it.
Let's see what else. So in the trailer, we see Catherine Hahn in the 80s episode. We see her say, do you want to take it from the top? And it looks like there's like a breakdown of the show. So that was definitely, I just think it's going to, as the Wanda breaks down more and they keep trying to push in from the outside, the show is going to break down more, I think. Does that make sense? Like literally like the production of the show, like the lights and the, like the audience with the laugh track and that kind of stuff. I could see it like going haywire and all that way too. So we shall see.
There's also, I think if in the very first episode, the way the show starts out, you see Wanda and Vision driving into the town. And in this episode, we see Jimmy Woo and Monica Rambeau, like they're having that meeting on what looks like that sort of
Mhm,
same
mhm.
bendy curve
Mhm.
going into town. So who knows? Maybe Wanda was just like driving her car down this road, and then this was like a trap or something that she had
Mhm.
driven into. Like she went into the reality not even knowing it. That kind of goes back to the more, oh, is she being manipulated theory?
Mhm.
That's another possibility, because maybe where we start in the show is where that fake
Exactly.
reality starts for Wanda. It's just you're driving into town and suddenly we don't remember our anniversary
Well, they don't in
while
the
we're
first episode.
here. And
They don't. That's what the hearts ask them, and they like, "Where did you go? Where did you go on your honeymoon? Where did you meet?" And they're like, "We don't even know. This just all started right now. It's just so
yeah,
wacky."
so that maybe Wanda stole Vision's
Oh God,
body
I
and
don't think Disney's going to cross
did a
that over. I
cross-country
mean.
road trip, and she just finds herself in this weird reality sitcom bubble run by witches and the devil to get twins. Who knows? This show can be anything. I have no clue. I have so many theories, but also zero confidence in
I know
any
what
of
I
them
know, and I don't know
to
anything.
be correct.
Except Jim Carrey's going to be Mephisto.
Which
We'll
I
talk
would
about
love.
that later. Okay, Curtis. Okay, I'm going to ask you. Here we are. We're closing this one in. I'm going to ask you the $1 million question. What now?
Ooh. So the seeds are planted in terms of the reality breaking down, swords, breaking in. Wanda's more aware. I think it will collapse even more, and that will start to like play a role. I think when the next episode picks up, it'll maybe be in that 80s sitcom where we see them raising the twins, and she's wearing the scrunchie and the sideways
The hair. Oh my gosh, the hair.
ponytail, and that will be
The hair burning a
so
hole in the
so
ozone
80s.
layer, one can of Aquanet at a time. Okay.
I could see the more sword sort of poking into this reality, maybe that creates more of her skips in genres. Like every time, they have a more significant impact on the reality, she's like, all right, now we're in the 90s, now we're in the 2000s. Like she has to just
Yep.
completely reset
We-
everything. And I think they're gonna kind of like back her into a corner. Vision he'll become aware of what Sword is doing and then try to work with him, because maybe they have the same mission. Well, we talked about there being like divides within Sword. There's some who want to treat her as a threat, and then there's other who just want to observe. And I could see Vision working more with the Darcy and Jimmy, and not so much the military, just trying to work with Wanda, break her out. But she's ultimately going to be, I don't want to call her a villain, because I don't think her intentions will be bad in any way. It's just she's being threatened and attacked and asked to confront her trauma, and that will be her lashing out, warping reality even further, and that will come to some kind of head at the end, whether it's a big battle, or I could even see, Vision maybe sacrificing himself and
absolutely.
dying again to be like, maybe he pulls the Mind Stone out of his, forehead himself. He's like, if this is the direction you're going, you're going to have to create me like
I
a million
absolutely
times.
think it's going to
Like,
be a heartbreaking situation at the very end. It's either going to be, a Sophie's choice situation with him and the kids, or Sophie's choice between like her fake reality and real reality. But if she chooses the real reality, like, maybe her power starts becoming like that orb starts spreading more and more and more, and they try to contact her. If she doesn't, stop it, it's going to destroy the entire world. But if she lets go of it, it's going to destroy her world. You know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah. So big $1 million question for you as
I
well.
agree with you too. I
now?
do think we're going to be in the 80s episode. I agree with a lot of those points as well. We saw in the trailer, going back to your points, that Vision does go to the barrier. And we've seen in the trailers before that he flies up at some point. Also looks like it's a Halloween episode that he flies up to try to see like what the hell is happening. I do agree with you that even if he doesn't realize it, Vision is going to be working with the outside to help Wanda, but he doesn't know that he's dead. You know, he doesn't know that he's dead, which is even more amazing. It just makes Vision they've just done such a good job with Vision. I'm going to say, this is going to be my prediction, if the Halloween episode is the same one as the 80s episode, which I don't know if it will be, but if it is, we've seen in the trailers, like the big tanks and crap, like try to infiltrate. I think that is going to be the Halloween episode. That's the episode we've seen with the most people in the entire show. Literally the most people running around the city, all this kind of stuff. And I think that's how she's manifesting it in the bubble, is that everybody in the city is the actual agents, and they're the people who were trying to break in.
Mm-hmm. How amazing would it be if it gets to the point where when they come to this reality, they're no longer turned into a beekeeper or something. Maybe they're coming in like full shield garb. And when they do that, how awesome would it be if they were like comic book accurate?
The shield, like the corny blue shield outfits. Oh, that'd be great. And then you lead right into like the Avengers battle. You know, we're gonna have to stop. You know, who's ever. You know, that could be a possibility. But that's my prediction. Will I be 2 for 2? Let's see.
Love it.
2 for 2 on episode 3 of 4.
You
Are we
lost
doing
me.
A podcast?
Well, always a pleasure. I cannot wait to see how all of this plays out or blows up in our face or is so incredibly off.
Why have we even been doing this? Which we could ask ourselves to begin with, but you know, we're giving it our best.
Exactly. I mean, what the hell else do we have to do to
video games
our
and
time
watching Wandavision 70
This is
times
all we
per
have,
week.
damn it.
And each other.
All we have.
And our listeners, the 7 of them. 3
all
4 of
10
them are
subscribers of
significant
you.
others
Thank
and family
you.
members. We love y'all.
We did. Could not actually we could absolutely do this without you,
want us to
but
do
we
this
wouldn't.
without you.
We don't want to. Well, got another
Next week,
another
man. I
episode
can't
in the
wait.
bag.
Next time.
All right.
Same
Until next time.
bat time, same bat channel. We can do a better outro.
Yes.
You'll fix this in editing.
That was it. We're running.
We
low
talked
on
about at the
tape.
beginning of the episode
Tape
we're
is
going to do this
expensive.
banter crap, and look at us now. We lost
We
everybody.
saved it for the end.
Yeah,
but
they're gone.
no one's listening at this point. So
Bye.
All right. See y'all later. Hey guys, thanks for listening to Marvel What Now podcast. This is Curt. For more theories and custom artwork, you can follow on social media at Marvel What Now.
And I am Peyton, and for more pictures of me shirtless and just general buffoonery, you can find me on Instagram at P4Peyton, Peyton. Be sure to like and subscribe at the bottom, and we will see you when we see you, because we owe you nothing.